welcome to another episode of the Firepreneurs podcast. Today, I have on Coach K. I am bringing on entrepreneur, coach, author, funding expert, negotiation expert, Kedma Ough. Kedma, welcome to the Firepreneurs podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So on your intro, it's almost like I need a couple pages to read through. So because you're always on the move, and in addition to all the things that I just started with, you're also filming a TV show in April called America's Real Deal.
That is correct. Yeah, I am so excited to share this. So America's Real Deal will be coming out. We're starting filming in April. Now, most of us have seen Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, so we know how that runs, right? Typically, we sit there in the audience or we're watching on TV and we see someone walk through the doors and they've got the sharks and then they pitch their product or their idea. And then the shark negotiates, or several sharks, and then they get the deal. And then we feel like, oh, we feel so good because, that person won. And then what do we get at the end of it? We only get like a feel good, or maybe we go and buy the product. America's Real Deal is completely different because we are actually engaging with the audience. So when people come through, I like to call it the dolphin tank. But when they come through, it's actually the audience that will help decide who is going to get a deal. And then we're going to open it up where the audience can actually participate in the investment as well. So You will have the judges or the sharks investing. But now imagine, Bennett, you're now watching the show. You're there with your family. You're like, oh my God, I love this story. I love this product. I love what this stands for. And now you'll have a chance to actually invest and make money off it as well. So it's really exciting. And the other thing I love about it is behind the scenes, we're doing a lot. Even if someone's not on the show, we're helping them raise funds, and we're also helping them go IPO if they are at that level. So I've been keeping this under my hood as a secret for close to a year, because they've had to interview the sharks and decide the strategy and who was going to be on the show. But I just received literally 2 weeks ago a note saying that filming is going to begin in April. So that
cool.
is the update.
Well, good for you. Sounds very exciting. I love TV shows, business shows especially, like how they evolve. Because I've watched Shark Tank, I watched Dragon's Den. Dragon's Den was before Shark Tank,
Yes.
And the shows keep evolving in complexity and being creative.
Yes.
That sounds like a pretty creative show.
Yeah. Well, I like shows where I get to make money. I'm going to be straight up. That's what I look for. And whether it's, me on the show or me as an audience participant, if someone's having an amazing business, I want to be playing in it with them, So that's what got me really intrigued.
So let's start there then, because we're actually going to start at the end, but why don't you bring us back to what even got you into being an entrepreneur? Because we've had you on as a past guest where you talked about your book, Target Funding, and you helped us with our Beginning with the End in Mind series to help would-be firepreneurs or entrepreneurs kind of get started and what considerations to think through as they get moving. But now I kind of really want to talk about your story, because your story is super powerful and it encompasses a wide array of sectors. So can you just kind of take us from the beginning to where you are now?
Yeah. So first I want to make sure I honor that, if someone asks in an interview what the beginning is, we have to decipher what beginning do we want to tell them? Do we want to say the beginning of entrepreneurship? Do we say the beginning of our origin that led to entrepreneurship? Because I think that for some of us, the story by which we show up in the world is even more important than what we do in the world. Okay. And so that story is my story. So I think, in all fairness to the audience, I think it's important for them to first know why I do what I do, and then how I do it, or how I got there. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, when you were kind enough to introduce me, you said, I'm in the space of funding and negotiation. And really, when I think about my journey in entrepreneurship and where I am today, it actually began with a negotiation. It literally began with me negotiating and putting all sort of everything I have into something and hoping that I was going to get the result. So to bring people back, it's really important to know what my mission is in the world. And everyone has a mission. Bennett, you have a very clear mission and you embed that in everything you do. My mission is simple: to remove barriers for myself and others. End of story. So if you see everywhere I play in the world, there is always some kind of barrier. And usually the barrier is not enough information or education, which results in people not getting either the wealth or the profit or where they want to be, whether it's a home service industry, whether it's youth, whether it's women, whether it's minority. I have built 7 state or national programs in the last 20 years, and every one of them is matched to a barrier to education. Once filled, leads to wealth or success or happiness. Now, let me sort of, does that help sort of to get to frame?
Absolutely. I think it's
Okay.
part of that beginning with the end in mind. Might as well do the same thing with our narrative here, right? You start with talking about this,
Yeah,
removing barriers, your mission, like it totally sets the tone for us.
I think, well, I'll tell you why, Bennett, because for people listening, if I tell you, what I do, most people won't remember it. If I tell you why I do it, you won't forget it. It will be embedded in you. And that's the power of storytelling and really owning your origin and why you do what you do. So to bring you back, I am an unusual unicorn because I'm a 5th generation entrepreneur. Now think about that. Most people who jump into entrepreneurship actually learn maybe in high school, most likely in college, most likely if they went to college, or if they didn't go to college, they were mentored by someone or they fell into it. Not too many people have been in a family or a lineage that's had over and over and over again entrepreneurs to shape how they think. So I think part of my success has been in my DNA. I'd like to say that I'm hundreds of years as an entrepreneur, and it's embedded in how I think, how I process, how I deliver, what I gravitate towards, and also I don't have as much limiting beliefs as other people that I know have. And I think, again, it's really attributed to the genes that have been given to me, and make me probably less in a place of fear because I'm more comfortable just taking risks. So to answer that question, I started with negotiation, and I believe that life is a series of negotiation. So really my path began at the age of 18. At the age of 18, and I think you know this, Bennett, so just for the audience, if they don't know me or they don't know my story, at the age of 18, I was actually on the run. I had to leave a very violent home environment. I had been subjected to that home environment in a violent way for many, many years. But unfortunately, my life was in danger. And the moment that my life changed was really at a college. I was actually, it was an evening class. It was wintertime. I was sitting in my class trying to better myself. And I received a 911 page from Judy, who at the time was my therapist. I remember picking up my books, running out of the college, literally into the winter air. It was, evening, so it was dark and it was freezing. And remember, I was in New York, and I remember heading to a payphone because that's what we had back then. I dialed, put the number in, put the money in, dialed, and what I heard on the other side of that phone is something that I will never forget. What Judy had said to me when I asked, "Why did you page me?" She said, "He is on the way to the college right now, and if he finds you, he's going to kill you." That was the moment where I hung up, and when I went back to that parking lot, I was already too late. So that's really where my story begins, because I literally froze knowing I couldn't run because he was pacing back and forth in his vehicle. And right there by myself with no one around me, I literally got on my hands and knees in the freezing cold concrete and started crawling to my vehicle. I was able to get to my vehicle, get my belongings, retrace my steps, go back to the payphone for help. And that moment I would go homeless for 5 years. I found a place through a group of friends, and they were able to get me into a small, very, what I call cockroach infested basement. But for 5 years, I literally lived there and I had to rebuild my life. The moment of negotiation, which will lead me back to why I do what I do, Bennett, was because I was ripped out of my situation very, very fast. I had to make very fast decisions. One of those decisions was to send a letter back to the college I was at to really indicate what could I do with my life. And I remember it was about 2 weeks later where they asked me to come and meet with the financial committee, where I basically stood there, the age of 18, saying I've lost everything, my home, my family, my identity. Could I, is there an opportunity for an education? And when they said they had to deliberate and I had to go back to the secretary's office while they deliberated, I remember asking the secretary, please, may I have a piece of paper and pen? That was the moment my negotiation began, because I wrote a letter to God. And in that letter, I negotiated with God. And I said, I have lost everything, my home, my family, my community, who I am. However, if there's an opportunity to better myself, to get an education, to become somebody, then I will spend the rest of my life opening doors to every single person I meet and giving them that opportunity. And because of that letter, and because I went back into that room and that college gave me my opportunity, literally 15 strangers said, we are going to now give you an education. We are going to allow you to learn. That set my precedent, Bennett, for what I do today. Everything I do today is based on the negotiation in that letter I had 30 years ago. So it's very important to know this as an audience, and as you asking me this in the interview, because when I tell you everything I do and how I got there with the entrepreneur and the SBA and the lending, always remember that the thread comes down to the negotiation I had with God. And it's super clear for me that I signed the contract that if I was to receive an education, I will use that education to open doors and remove barriers to every single person I meet. So that's why it's really important for me to call out why I do what I do. And then I can talk to you about the journey to get there.
So powerful. I mean, you writing that down in that moment too. And that's the part of the story that really jumped out at me. Like, that's like a pivotal moment, and I just can't even imagine, like, in that moment, like asking to get a piece of paper and a pen and write it down. Because I think a lot of people might have thought about it, but the fact that you wrote it down, there's something powerful there that you chose to do that.
Well, to respond to that, and for everyone who is going to be participating in what we're talking about right now, the reason I wrote it is because you have to remember, for 18 years prior, I begged for it. Every day I pleaded for God to come, for God to help us, for God to take us out of this situation. And every single day I had realized that there was nobody coming. And so I want you to imagine, as a very young child, at 7, at 8, at 9, to realize that nobody was coming. Nobody was coming to save us. When I wrote that letter, that's the time where I finally negotiated. And I said, all the chips are down now. There is nothing left you can take away from me. So either you use me for something, or I make the choice on whether I want to stay. That's how powerful and deep it became, Bennett. And I think what we want to really be very clear on in life is not everybody, but some of us are given that moment where we choose, especially when there's nothing left And the choice sometimes is easier to check out. I chose to negotiate. And, I am here today, committed every single day. That's why people say, why are you so driven? Because it surpasses every single thing I do every day. It is who I am. It is so ingrained in my DNA that I have no choice but to do that. That is why I tirelessly work towards helping people get access, whether it's through money, whether it's through resources, whether it's through benefiting themselves in their business, or whether it's getting them out of addiction. It doesn't just stay in business for me. I move in different situations where people are struggling. But to answer the question, it's really about understanding who we are, and then we can become the best version of ourselves. If we do not know who we are, Bennett, we can never become the best version of ourselves, no matter what we do in the world. So I am really clear on who I am, why I do what I do, and then I will share what I do.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I know that you've told that story to me and other audiences before in the past, but I think you're right. I think starting there really lays the framework for, unfortunately, I know the hardships didn't stop there either. So your entrepreneurial journey had a lot of the same pits and valleys, and wasn't a lot of peaks in the early stages. So
yes,
the journey wasn't over there. Where do you want to pick up from there with us?
Well, so let me pick up two things. One is, as part of the journey later on in my years, I had to file bankruptcy. And usually as soon as I say that and I'm in an audience or I'm a keynote, people are thinking, "Whoo, man, that's tough. I'm so glad I haven't filed bankruptcy. You must have been really, really poor at your financials if you had to file bankruptcy." Nothing is further from the truth. So one of the things I really believe, Bennett, is when we hear information is we have to remove our bias or our presumption, because most of the time it's wrong. It's actually false. And so that's the other piece to it. So in my case, the reason I had to file bankruptcy had nothing to do with my credit in terms of me managing my credit or defaulting on a loan or spending too much money. It was a simple situation. I was in a relationship and I was very financially prudent, and we kept arguing because they weren't as, and they had more, financial obligations. And at the last minute of trying to save the relationship, I decided to make the heroic decision of taking every one of their debts and transferring it in my name. Now think about this. You have excellent credit, no debt, you're financially considered as A rating from lenders, and then you decide heroically to transfer someone else's debt 100% into your name so that they can build their financial picture. Unfortunately, 6 months later, I'm sitting with my attorney because the relationship did not survive, and he gave me two choices. Choice one, you get to spend the rest of your life paying off someone's debt. Or choice two, you get to file bankruptcy and spend 7 to 10 years trying to rebuild your debt. I chose choice two. Now that choice was, again, I like to say, a gift from God, because had I not chosen that choice, I would not be here today to talk about how to reverse engineer funding and how to look at funding from that perspective. So I want to make sure that there's a clear understanding. And what you're saying is sometimes we see people as successful, but we don't realize how much they had to go through to get to where they are today. And what can we learn from that? So in the journey of entrepreneurship, I do want to take you through some of my lessons, some of the things I've done, and then, open up for you to maybe, give some thought or value. But I want to make sure we got the whole bankruptcy out of the way, which actually really turned into my book deal. So the whole premise around target funding was I really learned how to find money when I had no money. And now I help people essentially do the same thing in their situation. Whether they're bankrupt or not is irrelevant.
Yeah, I think that, there's the book, the obstacle is the way. And I feel like your story in that regard really helped give you a different perspective when you probably wrote
Mm-hmm.
Target Funding, that maybe other people who write books that are similarly in the same wheelhouse that don't have that perspective, like how much more valuable is it having that perspective, and had you not gone through the
Huge,
obstacle, would you have had the same insights, so it's,
huge. The best advice I give to any business owner is to go through their own, whatever they're selling, to go through their own experience, to go through their own BS, to go through whatever they're trying to promote in the world. And that's why I'm very confident about the project and what I do, because I've gone through it. It's again a representation of my life. To go from a credit score of 450 to 800 speaks in itself in terms of the volume.
mm-hmm.
Let me share a little bit about how I got into economic development, just for people to see, because really, again, like everyone else here, I began this idea of starting a business in Arizona. And I don't know if you know this story, Bennett. Do you know the story about me starting a spa in Arizona?
No, I don't think you told me that. I knew about the daycare center, right? But I don't think you ever told me about the spa.
All right, let me tell you about that, because this will give a perspective for the audience on, again, back to negotiation. What do you do when someone says no? Do you shut down your dream? Do you refine your dream? Do you go and get a new dream? Because we're going to be hit with the answer no
Mm-hmm.
more than we're hit with the answer yes.
Mm-hmm.
So again, very, very young, I'm in Arizona. I had left New York to start a new life. And I got into a job, excuse me, and literally 6 months later, I'm being laid off because the company goes out of business. Now, to my benefit, the way it's set up, because I was in a startup job, I was in the admin or call center role. But because I came from New York, when I actually got laid off, I made more money on unemployment because the unemployment was coming from New York than I made full time working, excuse me, for the company in Arizona. So it was the first time I got to experience what it felt like to be literally getting covered by the government full time and make more than working full time for a company.
That's crazy.
So that opened up the doors to look at entrepreneurship. So I got into a program called regional reemployment. This is very common in economic development. If someone gets laid off, they typically will go to some kind of economic development agency that incentivizes them to start their business. And that's where I met my mentor, Sandra Hoy Johnson, who, by the way, that was 25 years ago, is still my best friend and is still my mentor.
Cool.
So to give you that gravity of what that relationship is, it's unprecedented. So at the time I walk in, and she is now heading up this training program to help young entrepreneurs start their business. I was not in the home service industry at the time, and I was fascinated with spas, because if you look at Arizona, in particular Tucson, for the guys, you may not understand it. For the females, you're going to love it. You have Canyon Ranch, and you have Miraval, and you have Los Ventana, all these wonderful spas, Bennett, that nobody could afford except if you were super, super wealthy. However, I really liked bed and breakfasts. I don't know if you've been to a bed and breakfast before, but I like the ambiance and the coziness. So I had decided to go in and start my own bed and breakfast spa business. In fact, I still have a picture that I modeled for the business. If I find it, I'll send it to you. So here's what happened. I did everything right. I did the business plan. I did the research. I had interviewed customers, and I walk into the bank and hand them my plan. And at the time, I think I was asking, it was a long time ago, I think I was asking for about $350,000. And Bennett, this was what the response looks like. I hand them the business plan, and the lender says, Well, are you employed right now? No, I just got laid off. Well, do you have any assets? Well, I have a car I'm driving. It's about 10 years old. Um, what's your credit like? It's getting there. I kind of had some issues with that, but I've got a great business idea. And he didn't even bother looking at the business plan. He looked me straight in the eyes, Bennett. I cannot, I mean, even after all these years, I see the moment. He looks me straight in the eyes, and this is what he says: "We cannot help you. I suggest you go get a job." Now, one thing you're going to know about me, if you don't know about me, is you better never say no to me. If you ever say no to me, you are asking for me to go to war with you. I will do everything and anything to prove you wrong. In fact, it will become my mission to prove you wrong. Because if you think I can't do something, it's basically done. Before I walk out of that bank, you're already dead to me, and it's done, and I'm going to take care of it. So that was my attitude. I just looked at him and I said, "Thank you very much." I walked out and I thought, how am I going to do this? I need the capital. I have to build the spa. I want to do it with the bed and breakfast. There's no way for me to come up with this kind of money. What could I absolutely do to make this happen? And then I had a genius moment. My genius moment, Bennett, was we don't have to own every part of the decision to lay out our business. We have to remember that sometimes other partners or other people can bring that. So, in the matter of days, what I did is I switched my model and I started calling every top bed and breakfast in Tucson. I was only going to deal with high 4-star or high 5-star. And it went like this: I introduced myself. I explained that I was planning to create a spa program exclusively for bed and breakfast customers. And we already had the spa services in place. We had the modalities, we had the practitioners, and we had the model. What we didn't have was the right bed and breakfast to partner with. And what I essentially said is, if we can do it on site for your customers, you're going to get 30% off every single transaction. And I signed a deal in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, I was literally in business as a bed and breakfast spa in partnership with the top 5-star bed and breakfast in Tucson, Arizona. I didn't have to deal with rent or mortgage or dealing with capital or any kind of physical assets. All of that was already built in. All I had to concentrate was on the services, and that's how I began my company.
Way to take a no in 6 weeks, turn it into a business. I mean, that's the creativity. You took the no, said, all right then. I can't tell you're from New York at all, by the way. You took the no, and in 6 weeks.
What do you mean, Bennett?
Don't tell me no. You watch this.
Don't tell me no.
I love it. Okay, so bed and breakfast. You take the no. 6 weeks later, you're jamming, and then, but that isn't. I mean, you didn't. That's not why we're here. You didn't become a bed and breakfast millionaire.
No, I didn't become a bed and breakfast owner. Right. I did. Hey, I'm still running it.
Yeah.
So, no, but what I want to make sure is that sometimes when is to see some of the things that really led us there. Right.
Absolutely.
So that was one of the pinnacle points to say is I really was very honing in on different businesses. From there, actually, I got my first break to start developing a curriculum. I had other businesses and items, but the spa one and the daycare are my favorites. But I got my first break to actually I was hired as the Women's Business Center state director, like the director for our area, to really help women through the Small Business Administration with counseling and training and business development. And really, that's where I got my first big break, is managing the one in Tucson, Arizona. So that really opened my eyes, Bennett, to the possibilities of creating massive impact for thousands of entrepreneurs. It was very centered on women, but even in that perspective, it still allowed me to, I like to say it's not that we excluded men; it's just we targeted women. And then from there, I really moved into other aspects of economic impact. So I did the women. I also did a lot of economic development in serving people with disabilities, specifically veterans. So I've been a consultant for the Veteran Administration going on, almost 2 decades.
Thank you for that.
But I did a lot of work there. And then from there, I transferred to Oregon, where I did a lot of work in both women. I also did work in Native American. I did a lot of Indian country for the Native American population. And finally landed at the Small Business Development Center, which really is the largest arm of the SBA with over 10,000 offices. So we're talking a massive, massive program, 100% focused on small businesses. So, you know, it really opened, and through that, obviously, I've helped more than 10,000 companies, and that's a really, really low number. It's probably a lot more, but I like to say that's a 10,000 definitive number.
Uh-huh.
But what it did, Bennett, was allow me to weave in and out and work with so many situations in so many industries, home service, and within the home service, everything from junk removal to pest control to window cleaning. But it also allowed me to look at things like technology and restaurant industry and service industry. And I think that a lot of who I am today is because of so many experiences. I intuitively can be coaching someone and almost know the direction they need to go because I've been doing it so many times.
I mean, I just listening to the range of organizations that you worked for, it's like thinking about you taking the no, 6 weeks later, you're in business. So you're the small business owner, right? But then there's this leg of your career where you were also
Yes.
in a huge structure and organization environment, which is the SBA. Like, so you probably had to learn so much about how to navigate through red tape, working around more workarounds, taking more no's, turning them into yeses,
Right.
and then you bring that to the home services sector. And so like, it totally makes sense to me that, like you said, you can just intuitively kind of adapt to different types of situations quickly because of the wide range of experience.
Well, and I want to make a comment on that. It's important. In every aspect of my life, I hear no's all the time. In the government sector, when someone says no, I make a decision. Do I agree to the no or do I do the yes and take the consequences? And if you see any of the work I've done, even within the sector of economic development, I usually take the yes and accept the consequences because I've had people say, this program won't work. This strategy won't work. We're not going to give you funding for it. So you know what I do? I get the funding on my own. I do it without funding. I could speak to probably 2 or 3 programs where the organization, the government, or the organization I was working with said, you cannot do this. And I still did it on my own to prove that I can do it and I can do it successfully. And I did. You see, remember I said, going back to it, you tell me I can't do it, I will show you I can do it. And I will show you how I could do it exceptionally well. And so that's the other theme for me is sometimes, and I want people to remember this, this is a very powerful moment. Sometimes the people that are around you cannot see the vision you see. So are you going to then take away that vision, not actually expand on that vision, not deliver on that vision? Or are you going to work around their inability to see the vision so that they can see the vision? And that's what I'm known for. So if someone says no, it's often because they can't see what I already see. And it's my job to show them what's possible.
That is one of those things that you can't relate to it unless you've been in it. But I mean, think about the moments where people have what you just described and they do walk away because
Ah,
because they think just because somebody else can't see what they're communicating, oh well,
yes.
that means it must be a bad idea because this person who's only heard me talk about this for 5 minutes is now shooting down my idea. So now I must walk away. But that has to happen all the time, right? Like you had to
All the
experience
time.
people walk away just because somebody couldn't see what they could see.
But then that goes back to my lesson number 2. And please, for everyone here, and you, Bennett, you'll appreciate this. Do not forget this. Your ability to discipline your mind with such resilience can put you in a position that anybody who says no is not going to deter what you want to do. We talk about, if I had a choice to build my physical stamina or my mental stamina, I will choose building my mental stamina every single day of the week because I could be in physical exhaustion. But if my mental position is so strong and so unbreakable, my body can do amazing things. But I could be, if the flip side of it is, if I'm in physical shape, but I'm in mental insecurity, limiting beliefs, or unaware, I could lift the smallest thing and it's going to be exhausting. So it's really important to have that mental discipline because when someone says no, I don't get upset with that. Why would I get upset with someone who can't see what I can see? It's not their fault. I just have to position it. I'll give you a quick example. I was responsible for building the National Franchise Education Program for the Small Business Development Centers. We're talking about a massive program that typically in an organization like SBDC would take years to do. I did it in 3 years. That means in 3 years, not only was it developed, not only was it executed, not only did we have test cases, but it was rolled out as a national initiative in 3 years. Now, what people don't know behind the scenes was from the moment I decided to do this, I was told it will not work. I was told it would not work. I was told there was no funding for it. I was told that our audience or our customers coming to SBDC could not even afford franchises. And so I decided to beta test it in one of the poorest, poverty-stricken parts of the US. It was actually in Rockwood, Gresham, if you go into the statistics, you could see one of the highest areas for unemployment and poverty. And in 1 year, Bennett, we brought in $1 million in revenue, closed $1 million for franchises for small businesses coming through that program. Okay. And I had really no funding. That was the beginning of me proving what was possible. So my point in telling you this is not to shine light on me. I am not special. I am not different than anyone hearing or watching this. I am just 1000% so mentally disciplined and so clear on my vision that honestly, nothing can break that. It's just my job to show them what they can't see.
That is exactly the segue I'm looking for, because you from coming from this experience, now you're coaching and you're coming across entrepreneurs. Like if we're kind of following along the journey, you're a business coach and you're the VP of coaching at Concord. So you're coaching coaches that coach business owners, right?
Yes.
So you're getting everybody in the spectrum, especially in home services. So this point right here is something that you have to encounter like all the time, right?
Every day.
Self-limiting beliefs with business owners. So this advice that you're giving is probably advice you're giving them as well. But what is something else that you feel like when it comes to business owners that you feel like you're saying regularly along the same lines?
I'm saying a lot actually to the coaches too, because we had a I like to call it coming to Moses meeting with the coaches because of the power of language. One of the things that's really important for me is, are we living, and this is for business owners and coaches, are you making decisions, especially when it's decisions on customers, customer acquisition, employee engagement, the hiring or prospect of employees? Are you living your life as a transactional decision? Are you living your life transactionally, or are you living your life as a transformational decision. The difference between the left and the right, transactional, is very matter of fact. This is what it looks like. Transformational is very relationship driven. What does that other person need? What do they need to move the dial? And so one of the things I'm very clear with the business owners is, if we take the example of employee engagement, employee retention, I cannot tell you how many times, Bennett, I hear the same. It's like a broken record, and it goes like this. Well, I can't find any employees, and none of these employees are doing what they're supposed to do. They don't got the work ethics I got. Everybody we're interviewing just, doesn't understand our culture, and, they get on here and they're lazy. I mean, on and on and on. And then I have to tell them, the employees are not the issue. You are. You're the problem. You're the issue. You have to fix it, because, whether I'm paying someone $30 an hour or $15 an hour, I can tell you that I have been in many, many situations, me personally and guiding companies, that money is not the issue. If they feel that they can respond to a leader, they can emulate a leader, that the leader's investing in who they are, they will actually stay for less money. So one of the things I really embed into everyone I work with, whether it's a coach or whether it's a business owner, is what are you doing to improve yourself? And stop thinking it's someone else's problem. You're probably the problem. And then what do we need to do to modify that?
A question I ask regularly is, would you follow you? I hear myself asking that question, like when they describe a situation, I'm like, well, would you apply to that job the way it's written? Or would you respond well in that interview? Would you follow you? And that's
I love that. I love that.
How often can people answer yes to that? Well, no, I wouldn't.
Not often.
I wouldn't do that. Well, why do you expect them to?
Not often.
Yeah.
Not often. And maybe they've been so removed, especially for business owners have been doing it for many, many years, or they're no longer on the truck, or they're no longer doing cleaning. They don't realize what someone's experiencing. So one of the things I always recommend is, when was the last time you actually took a day and gone through and simulated what everyone else in your staff is doing? When's the last time you got on the truck? When was the last time you picked up a phone? When was the last time you actually cleaned? When was the last time you went and, threw out this stuff and had a customer yelling at you? You would be shocked how many of them, especially who have been around, who've been building these 7-figure businesses many, many years, and they are not in touch with reality. They have no clue what their own employees are going through, and then they're wondering why their employees are leaving. Here's a case in point. I hear this from the maid service industry a lot. They don't understand why after 6 or 8 weeks that a lot of the maids, they quit. I said, well, why are they quitting? Well, they say they're physically exhausted. I said, well, let me ask you a question. You're asking them to do a marathon, literally to run a marathon. You are not training them for the marathon. You are not giving them any physical modalities or suggestions or exercises. You're not even giving them the type of food to do. You're expecting them to just get on and start running the marathon. And then you want to know why they're fainting out of exhaustion? What are you doing to train them physically or mentally for this job? Silence. Nothing. I said, well, how about you fix the training problem then? And realize that if you're dealing with major physical, situations where they're going to have to lift or do, maybe you have to train them for that before they get on the job, or give them some kind of tools. Otherwise, we're making these assumptions that they're all fit for it, and it's not true.
Right. It's a convenient assumption too, right? Because that's the one that you want to assume, like, oh, well, the way that we do it works. It's convenient to think that. But when it doesn't, like, it's a harder truth to look at in the mirror, and it comes back to, like, if you were the maid, I don't know the scenario, but like if you were the maid starting work there, what would you want to happen for you on day one? You know,
Exactly.
what would you want somebody to come up and say, hey, I'm your trainer. I'm going to walk you through what week 1 looks like and make sure that you're set up the right way. Like, that's what I would want. So then, like, when we don't do things like that, why do we expect this result just to magically work out? And instead it doesn't. And then you end up having this spillage,
Right.
so to speak. Things kind of go out the back door because you're spending so much money on recruiting and you're not spending any money on retention.
Amen. Amen.
Sorry, I got on my soapbox there.
No. And I think your point, and when I give counsel to businesses, it's usually really, there's so many areas, that I give support, but really at the end of the day, it's the more that we can become aware of what we need to improve, the more our company improves. So what I love about you, Bennett, is you're constantly in a space of reflection, awareness, you're reviewing things, you're methodical about it. And I think it's really important to realize that, that may be part of why, we see such success is if, spend the time. Don't assume just because you did a program, it's working. We know it's not working because we see the triage, we see the results. And we could take, whether it's employee retention or it's sales conversion, we could still, the numbers don't lie. What we need to know now is, why are the numbers like that? Why are people not staying? Why are customers not buying from you? And then what can we do to gamify it?
I love the show Undercover Boss.
Me too.
I'm a geek when it comes to business shows, and so I watched that one, and I love the concept of it. Right? I mean, you can always tell which one's like, okay, they know, right? They know they're on Undercover Boss. They're kind of milking it, But you can always, the concept of it is like, you learn the ugly truths inside your business. And I remember you gave a piece of advice one time that you should, because it's hard to undercover boss your business. But one thing that you used to say was, like, you should guest shop your business, like hire somebody to guest shop your business. And I always loved that advice. Have you had any of your clients do that?
I would love to say I do, but I think that in order to guest shop, it requires hard work. So I haven't had one come back and say, I've done that. Although if they do it, it'd be a huge one. I just recommended someone actually do that. So I'm gonna be curious to see, because they're having issues right now with their training process and all that. So I said, I want to actually see about an undercover employee coming in, and I want you to put them through it. And let me tell you what's really important. When we're trying to uncover why things are happening, when we're trying to uncover whether it's customer analysis, or because most people do surveys or focus groups or interviews, the key to true feedback and why Undercover Boss works so well is anonymity and community. If you create a scenario where you're trying to interview with someone and they know it already, there's inherent bias, because the presumption is that person's going to be on their good behavior, say the right things, because they're on stage, so to speak. If it's fully anonymous and they have no idea who you are, they have no idea what you do, you've now created anonymity in the community, which is why Undercover Boss really works, because it's really showcasing that someone's going in and nobody knows who it is. So what we're seeing how people really are, as opposed to them knowing we're coming in for an interview or coming in to actually review, and they're going to skew how they are. That's why I always love surprised audits, because that's when you get to see what the company's really doing, right? I used to work with, on the economic end, I used to work with people from OSHA. When they went and did surprise audits, they saw a lot of different results than if they went in and told them in advance they were coming in to do an audit.
You gave that advice, and I'll tell you that I did it. I took your advice. I did it in a kind of a subtle way. Because I still have people that will reach out to me, and this is advice that I would give to anybody listening to the show is, if you have somebody that knows you from growing up or from the neighborhood, so to speak, right, and they reach out to you like, hey, I need this done, I take those opportunities and I'm like, hey, okay, here's what's going to happen. We'll get this done for you. but I don't want you, I'm going to take care of it. You're not going to pay for it. What I want you to do instead is I want you to call the office and schedule it and just go through the whole thing. Like it's just know that
Love it.
whatever they charge you, I'm going to cover it. So don't worry about it. and I totally like dropped these on the team. And you know, it's not because I'm trying to have like a gotcha moment to get somebody in trouble. It's because I want to find the holes, you know, and I get good feedback, you know, by and large, it comes back like, hey, it went really well. Here's one thing I would think about tweaking. Because when it's somebody that you know, like they want to see you succeed too. So they want to give you honest feedback. And so I took your advice. I loved it. And
I love it.
I guest shop, quote unquote, guest shopped with a couple of my friends that reached out to me like on Facebook or something that are like, hey, I want to schedule a job. I'm like, no, here's what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do.
No, I love it. And, you know, I know in your business, you've had ups and downs and, you know, one of the things I always try to vacillate, and I'm going to ask you the question, you know, you're someone who's very transparent. You're a servant leader. You're a thoughtful leader. But even in all that, have you ever had someone, you know, try to take from you or, you know, diminish your business or steal from you or, you know, create a drama? And the reason I'm asking is because you've done everything so exceptionally well. Do you think that those people are sort of just an outlier, or could you have done something different, or could we as business owners or leaders do something different for situations like that?
Oh, I like you're flipping the interview on me here. Yes, you know, I've had some of those challenges in business where I think sometimes we wear the lens that the business is, oh, it's doing great. You know, I've got it right where I want it. Everything's great. And you think you're wearing it through these like rosy lenses. But then what you don't know is that something else, one of your systems and processes that's really dialed in, what you find out is that, yeah, but there was a workaround or there was a loophole. And I've had in my own experience as a business owner where team members have taken advantage of me. I've had theft in the company. I've had people use the company credit card for something that, you know, was completely personal. You know, I've had people wreck trucks, you know, by being negligent. I mean, and so this 10 years I've been running this business in particular, and each time, as much as I wanted to pretend that my systems and processes were dialed in and I had them right where I wanted them, what it really was for me was a wake-up call that you didn't think about this. You need to look deeper into preventing this from happening. And so like each time was like a humbling educational opportunity rather than a mad at the world opportunity. Oh, employees suck. You know, no, I'm not hiring anybody. I'm going to scale back. You know what? I'm done. I've had this happen. I'm going to scale my business back now and do it here because it's easier at this level. You know,
Right.
Never once. Instead, you know, and I think that part of this comes from one of your areas of expertise is like when you surround yourself with people who can coach you on the positive and call you like, hey man, if that happened, it's probably because you need to go fix something in your business. You know, when you have people that are willing to humble you and say, yep, roger that, go find the hole and I'm gonna go plug it and fix it and keep jamming. You know, I'm gonna move on. Yeah. When you have that mindset, back to your earlier point, like when you're callousing your mind, you're making it so mentally tough that you can overcome anything, no matter how dark or ugly it can be. You just gotta wake up and go back to work the next day and get back after it and just make it better. And so for me, to answer your question kind of long-windedly here, sorry.
No.
I think that, of course, there's been even though when we guest shop, you know, the feedback and those experiences has been good. There's also been times where I've gotten something that kind of flanked me, you know, and surprised me. And I just took that as a learning opportunity to make the business better. The obstacle is the way, you know, kind of approaching it that way.
How do you deal with that though? And again, this relates to the whole bigger picture of our discussion. You know, system and process is something that even though it's difficult, it can be managed, it can be tracked. But then how do you deal with the relationship one? Like, you know, I know you and I've been in situations where, you know, maybe there's a disagreement in your employees, and maybe you step in and you know, give your voice, and maybe some people's feelings get hurt. How do you actually systemize the process of relationship? Because, you know, in some cases, I would be fair to say you probably lost one or two people that you valued. And as much as we want to do the system, it really came down to relationship and the culture. So I'm just curious to know, because this is what happens a lot of times is with our business owners, they want to process the heck out of everything, and we should. But some of it comes down to just organic relationships.
Yes. I can picture 3 people right now, right? That relationship wise in the last 10 years, that I would love to still have had in the company along the way.
Mm.
That
Mm.
that ultimately, at that time, as a leader, I wasn't as good of a leader as I should have been. And I ended up losing some people because of that, because of not being a good leader, and destroying the relationship, butting of heads, egos getting in the way. And I know that for me, the growth over, the really last 3 to 5 years building the business has been when I started to work on myself and look in the mirror and know that, like, I've got to get better as a leader so that I can be a better leader and be better at relationships. If I'm really going to build this business into the size that I want and really create a company that takes care of its people, I've got to assume that I've got to get better, And so, like, pursuing growth personally, which isn't quite systems and processes, that's kind of a different wheelhouse now. When I pursue growth, like, personally and look to level up, like, seeking out mentorships, coaching, reading books, assuming that I don't know it all.
Right.
Owning my mistakes, the things that went wrong in the past, like looking at, oh, wait, there actually was something I could have done better there. And just kind of letting my ego get out of the way. That's each time I've done that, that's when I've leveled up as a leader and gotten better at relationships. And so I'm taking those. Now, I think that the burden of responsibility, once you kind of have those breakthrough moments, is also then to go take those lessons and teach it to your internal leaders in your own company, so that they're taking your lessons and mistakes, and you're maybe shortening the learning curve for them so they don't go make the same ones, and that's what I try to do at F.I.R.E Dogs, is I try to teach those by humbling myself and telling them about my own mistakes and shortcomings, like that. Hopefully I'm shortening their learning curve so they don't have to experience that with one of their key people or something.
Okay, thank you for letting me reverse the interview.
I would expect nothing less from Coach K. That's a fact. So on that subject of coaching, you coach some pretty amazing coaches.
I do.
And
Incredible.
I know that, one of the guys that you worked with while you were at the SBA and now you work with at Conquer.
Brandon Vaughn.
We've had him on the podcast. We love Brandon. He's a stud.
Love Brandon.
And he really broke through in an industry, which is exterior cleaning, and just,
yes, he did.
He's really leveled up the whole industry. And, and so you've coached Brandon and you guys have Conquer. So kind of, how's that going? How do you like it?
It's going incredibly well. We are actually, we're in a position where we're looking for another, 10 new coaches. So, if you're listening to this and you're in the coaching industry, we're in a high demand right now because of our success. We have such tremendous success, with over year after year after year with our clients, that, a lot of this is word of mouth, and people like, I want to get in, I want to go through Conquer. So it's going very, very well. Again, it's a very young company. It's 3 years. So, we learn as we grow, right? We're still in that space of having that, opportunity to be more flexible. But I would say, one of the things I focus on when I teach the coaches is that we're not here just to conquer someone's business. We're here to help them conquer their life. Because if we're dealing with someone who's on track to do 3.5 million and their spouse doesn't talk to them, their kids don't want to deal with them, and they've just gained another 300 pounds, we're not conquering anything. All we're doing is showing them how to get a better, income or bottom line, but that doesn't mean they're conquering their life. So there is a lot of emphasis in ensuring that, we are helping to really build better humans, better business humans. And secondary to that, I really insert this over and over again to our coaches, is someone else's definition of success is not our own definition of success. So we have to try to remove the bias of what success means. Because if we come in with this biased approach that we think success means X, Y, and Z, we're just trying to feed our own ego. It's actually not true. So the more we can step into someone else's world, well, what is their meaning of success, even if it doesn't match our own, then we're delivering what we need to deliver to that conqueror. So, and then I do want to make sure that I make a concerted effort to state building a business is hard, Bennett. And why I bring this up is we have an internal program in Conquer that addresses the mental health aspect of business. It's not something we sell or promote outside of Conquer, but every Conqueror knows that in the event they're going through something hard, right? We're talking about, it could be a situation in their marriage. I've dealt with people who have PTSD. I've dealt with people who are actually currently addicted to drugs, whether it's cocaine or something else. We have no stigma. If someone in Conquer is going through hard things, we want them to reach out to us first so we can help triage, get them the support. A lot of times we'll partner with external companies to make sure they're getting supported. But that gives you the level and depth of Conquer, is that we really want to make sure that we're there as their business family, regardless of what's happening, because everybody wants to show up and say, oh man, my business is doing great, life is good, everybody's happy at home, and that's usually not the truth. So we really try to make sure that we're very transparent. I'm working with a gentleman right now. His company is on track to do $1.5 million, but he's not engaging with his son. Well, what does that have to do with Conquer? Well, everything, because it creates anxiety for him. His son is not talking to him. He's not connecting with him. So on his accountability every week is a little personal KPI. Hey, did you go out with your son? Did you guys walk together? Did you have a conversation? That gives you just a small inkling to just what it means for us to coach and what it means for us to help build better business humans.
I love it. Yeah, it's one thing to set a bunch of tactical goals to go out there and execute in your business, but if you're not setting any goals for your family, your health, and I know that you're big on that, you like to set a series of goals, hero goals. So yeah, I can definitely vouch. I think I've done this on the program so many times, but I mean, the community and the support inside Conquer, the range of experience from the coaches, the fact that they're humble, they don't have all the answers, but they know where to point you so that you can go find the better answers. Like, I think anybody listening that owns a business, whether it's Conquer or something else, like just being able to humble yourself and know like you don't have to have all the answers, one, and that B, that you don't anyways, even if you think you do. And surrounding yourself with people that can help you is huge. So I have one more question for you on the business front.
Yeah, let's do it.
Regarding coaching and consulting and the wider, because between funding and negotiation, coaching, you have to come across a lot of scenarios. And I think you just touched on one that's really important. But what is advice that maybe you would give to somebody, call it maybe 3, 4, 5 years into their entrepreneurial journey? They're hitting some of these metaphorical walls or maybe literal walls. What would be some advice you would give them to help like break through?
What specific walls do you feel like they're hitting?
I feel like in that 3 to 5 year range, especially tying back to your experience at the SBA, that's like where you see a lot of businesses fall off, right? That's like they throw in the towel. They can't they can't do it anymore. And I think I've given this advice on the program before, and I give this advice to entrepreneurs all the time, which is, if you're having a really, really tough day where your brain, it feels like it's pulsating, your head's on, like feels like your hair's on fire, like your wires are all crossed and you're just exhausted. And that's the time where a lot of people say, that's it, I'm done. I quit. I'm done. I'm winding it down. What I tell people to do on that day is I say, hey, go to sleep first. Like, just go to bed, okay? Go to sleep, go to bed, wake up the next day, and then we'll revisit it. Because normally what happens is they end up feeling the next day they go to bed and they're like, all right, now I'm ready to get back after it. Mm-hmm. But those moments of weakness, I feel like a lot of people like throw in the towel at the worst time to even make that decision. And it seems to be in that 3, 4, 5 year range where I feel like a lot of people throw in that towel.
So without knowing the specific person, I would say, let me respond a few ways.
Okay.
If someone was throwing in the towel because of exhaustion, the first thing I'm going to do is ask for clarity on why they even started the company. Well, I just wanted to do window clean. No, that's not why. Why did you want to do it? I want to understand how strong their why is, because if they don't have a strong why, they're going to throw in the towel. It doesn't matter what year it is. So that's the first thing. I want to understand what they're grateful for, what their mission is, and why they're doing what they're doing. Second thing, a lot of times the physical exhaustion is because they're 3, 4, 5 years and they're doing too much, and they're what we call our control freaks. They want to control everything. They want to manage everything. They want to handle everything. It's like they say they're growing this company, and then they're in every single department for every single meeting, handling every single issue. So the second thing I do is I have them go through an exercise where they have to really indicate where are they spending their time. And then we have a great document that I put together called What is Your Time Worth? Because if I can see where they're spending their time, I can tell them exactly what their time is worth. And so many times, Bennett, they think they're spending their time at $1,000 an hour of value, but in fact, their time is worth $15 in value. So I will restructure their time to make sure that they are not feeling that exhaustion. And then I think the third thing is to think about is it one aspect of their business that's creating that angst, right? Many of the companies I deal with, because again, it's the funding space, I'll be straight up and tell you, they're coming in and on a gross revenue, Bennett, they're doing great. They're proudly doing it. They're showing me numbers like I'm hitting 1.5, I'm hitting 2.5, I'm hitting 4 million. And their net margin is horrendous. They have no protection in the company. It's literally like they're starving their company. Sometimes they're taking too much out of the company for their own personal needs to sort of show that they're keeping up with the Joneses. They have no emergency fund. And so they have everything set up. They have all their capacity. But if one thing goes wrong, the entire project goes upside down. So what we do is we restructure and say, listen, we've got to add these contingencies. I know that you want to have every truck on the road for 20 days straight for 12 months. But have you thought about the weather? It sounds ridiculous, but they're setting them up. So what they're doing is they're doing all this setup, all this capacity, and then they're upside down because they're basing it with these expectations that they get this revenue with all these expenses, and it's a nightmare. So usually it's one issue that's gotten them to that breaking point. That issue could be a particular department, or it could be a particular person. Like, I've been trusting this person to do it. He's let me down. She's let me down. And what I say to them is, you've given that person too much power. If they leave or something happens to them, you are screwed.
Golden handcuffs. Is that what that's called, right?
Yes,
Like
golden handcuffs. So for those people, I love the fact that you say pause, sleep on it overnight. I would also add in, write down take a sheet of paper. And I always tell them sheet of paper, do not put it on your computer, because when you write, your brain processes differently. Sheet of paper to the left, everything that's positive and you're grateful for. To the right, everything that's bothering you, in order of priority. In order of priority. Once I have that in place, we usually can figure out what we need to do to turn around the ship.
I know I didn't give you a lot to go off of there, but I thought that was a pretty good answer without having the variables that you might normally have.
I have no variables. No variables.
Kedma, this has been awesome. I know we haven't even gotten to probably 60% of the projects or experience that you have covered and the things you probably have going on just today. But I think for the impact that we wanted to create for the audience, it was an awesome interview. And thank you for sharing all your stories with us.
I have one last request
Please.
for you and the audience. I think it would be really fun for the audience to send in real case scenarios, and you and I will tag team and answer it as part of the podcast. I envision us having 10 or 15 real scenarios that they call in. Here's my situation. Here's how many trucks I have. Here's the dilemma. That would be really fun because we can then really zero in and maybe help with some ideas, solutions, suggestions that can be specific to cases.
Oh, it's good. Firehouse, we call those tabletop exercises. We'll do some tabletops.
I don't know if you've done it already on the podcast, but I think it would be super fun.
Yeah.
To just have, if they don't want to, if they want to be anonymous, then, just put in create a quick type form and here are the questions we need. And we'd go to town and just have fun and just how can we solve it for them? What are some suggestions we have?
We're going to do some tabletops. I love it. Consider it done. Anybody listening, send them in. Molson will get them all compiled for us. And then me and Kedma will tackle them.
That would be fun. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you, Coach Bennett. I just want to honor you and say how grateful I am to have you in my life. And, you're an exceptional coach, exceptional business owner, exceptional family member, because I watch you with your kids and your wife, and you're just doing everything that role models who we can become. So I just want to give gratitude to you.
Oh, thank you, Coach. I appreciate that, but I can't let you off the hook because everybody knows on the podcast, because I've mentioned it several times, you were my business coach. I know you coach Brandon, you coach me, you coach the coach of the coaches. So everybody here is grateful for your time today. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
That's it for the podcast, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Firepreneurs Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, we please ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel or consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast outlet. Take care, everybody.